Time to get the rust off. Time to get the rust off. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Machtails from the Cantina. This is episode 18, with only 2 more to go after this. We're getting the rust off tonight. It has been too long since our last episode. A lot has happened. The World Series happened in the flesh. I was there. I finally made it in to Game 3 of the World Series. They tell you to mask up. These are my seats over here. We had a presidential election, which was big, which was huge. And they're shutting down the U.S. again. When I released the first episode of this show back in April of this year, I did not see this thing having a shelf life. I thought this was a very, very, very dated program. And the funny thing is that a lot has happened since the last Mocktails episode. And a lot has happened this year, but it still seems to be the same shit, which is crazy, right? My next guest on the show is somebody that I went to Norway with. He was in the Force Among Us. He was the creative consultant on The Walkers Among Us. He had a little bit of a cameo in one of my favorite scenes from the real fans of the saga. And I've had a couple beers with him at Star Wars celebrations in the past. Would you please welcome to the show my old friend, Rob Schneider. Rob, how are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Chris.
What are you drinking tonight?
I remembered watching one of the mocktails, and if I remember correctly, you were enjoying an Energy City. It's the Pumpkin Cobbler. But I do have to comment, somewhere along the way, as craft beer fans, we've decided we want beer that doesn't taste like beer. We'll enjoy a Pumpkin Cobbler, but I think we should have voted on that before we just accepted that we wanted milkshake IPAs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of the trend right now. Well, cheers. I am drinking, I'm sure you've had this before. This is a smoked porter from Alaskan Brewery. This is the 2020. It's nothing aged, and oddly enough, I am drinking it out of a mug made of a bat. I used my antlers that I bought in Norway on the trip. Now, I do have to say, speaking about craft beer and, voting on before everything became trendy and everybody started drinking all these fruit beers and these milkshake IPAs, I remember one of the geekiest things that I've ever seen anybody do when it comes to beer is I was having a couple craft brews with you. I believe it might have been when we were filming in Atlanta, The Walkers Among Us. You had a notebook of all these beers from a long time ago. And you had these notes in there. And I thought that was really cool. I wish I would have done that because now I got to log all my beer on Untapped from memory. I wasn't as smart as you, and I did not keep a journal. So how many different craft beers have you drank in your life?
Oh, geez, thousands.
What is your go-to craft beer?
Probably a double IPA or West Coast IPA would be my normal go-to favorite style. As for like a favorite brewery, there's way too many. There's a great one here in Bloomington Normal right now called Little Beaver. They do some really good stuff. How I approach beer, I just like, one, I like beer, and two, I like tasting a variety. So although there's always a favorite style, for me it's more about trying to I don't want to say experiment, but just find the widest palette and find out what's out there.
I have like 8 different beers in my fridge, and I'll usually drink one and then move on to the next. But as you know, you can't start with the double IPA because it wrecks the palate. Where did you get the Energy City beer? I know you always have tricks up your sleeve. I know that.
This one, my wife did some travels, and I sent her with a little shopping list, and so she brought that home for me.
How's your wife doing? And how are you guys doing holding up during this time?
Doing well. Yeah, both Lisa, my wife, and I are fortunate enough that our employer is having us work from home. Early on, we had to get used to working at home, and at the time, my youngest, Gabriel, was wrapping up high school, so he had all of his online classes. And then Hayden, our oldest, had finished up a semester from Ball State, also here at home. So we had like 4 people pounding on the wireless, and it took a little coordination while they were taking finals and getting projects done. But so far, everybody's staying healthy.
When this first happened, it really reminded me of The Walking Dead. And when the news first hit in March, we've never really lived through anything like this, and it brought back a lot of the memories from the show. Can you relate to that, or what was your experience when you first heard the news?
I think I was probably with a lot of people thinking that it was serious, but maybe we'll blow over fairly quick. They talked kind of about the V. It's going to happen real harsh, and we'll shut everything down for a couple weeks, and then we'll get back to normal. I remember when it first started, although I took it serious, we still had plans for Gabe to have a graduation party, still had plans to have food catered and invite lists and all that kind of stuff. And I remember joking, saying Halloween's one of my favorite holidays. And I remember joking with Lisa and some other friends. It's like, Halloween was going to fall on a Saturday night. We're going to have daylight savings time. We're going to have 2 full moons in the month of October. I'm like, this is like the perfect October for a Halloween celebration. And I jokingly said, can you imagine if we're still dealing with this pandemic? I just couldn't even, it was just a joke that then in probably June timeframe, I'm like, holy cow, I think this could continue. I am reminded in the Walkers Among Us, the bonus scene is when you were interviewing them. I think the question was around, can you see the zombie apocalypse happening? And I think Jay kind of jokingly said, maybe we're already in it. But I did kind of reflect on that, thinking we're probably closer now than definitely when The Walker Among Us was being made and when the Walking Dead show started really getting some popularity going.
Speaking about the popularity of The Walking Dead, I had kind of phased out of The Walking Dead. I think there was a point, I can't tell you what season it was, but there was a point where I was waiting for that main character to die, because that's why I love Rogue One so much, is you fall in love with these characters, the filmmaker takes them away, and the emotion is just really hard to top, It's just a powerful thing in filmmaking. And I felt like they were just dragging things on in The Walking Dead, and I got away from it, and I never got back into it. Are you still watching that show on a regular basis, and have you kept up with Fear of the Walking Dead?
To be honest, no. I probably got to a somewhat similar place where you were at. If you remember when we talked with Walkers Among Us, my favorite character was always Rick Grimes.
Yeah.
I related to Rick as a father. And I remember reading the early graphic novel Robert Kirkman had pulled together, and he talked about how The Walking Dead was really Rick's story. And so maybe naively, I always felt like The Walking Dead would end when, spoiler alert, Rick's character was no more. I do think the television show was really, really, really good. There are some hiccups here and there during some of the, season 6, 7, 8. I don't think the quality and story writing quite kept up as cinematic maybe as the earlier seasons were. So my interest started to fade. Then when Rick kind of was taken out of the main storyline at that point, and what had happened to Carl a couple episodes before, I was like, okay. My impression was this was more about Rick and Carl's story, and it was apparent that the story was going to continue, at least in the meantime, without those two characters. And at that point, I think I finished watching that full episode after Rick was put on the helicopter and taken away. And after that, I was like, I think I'm just going to step away from it for a while. I continued to read the comics. The comics I stayed with up until the end. Robert Kirkman kind of surprised people with ending that when he did. But that was, I think, a little bit more closer to the vision of Rick and Carl's story. So the comic book for me kind of wrapped it up. We both have a Star Wars love at that point. Like you said, Rogue One was awesome. Now we've got The Mandalorian. Some of the sequels kind of came out, and I was like, okay, I get back to enjoying Star Wars just as much.
How did Star Wars start for you?
I was born in '70 when the original Star Wars came out. You know, I was right in the wheelhouse of sci-fi, and I remember probably the earliest was like a lot of our memories where there was a child. I remember two classmates, a good friend of mine, Mike Hansel, and another classmate, Conan Castelline, kind of both simultaneously brought Star Wars action figures to the classroom.
What are they doing to you?
You can raise the elevator and make R2-D2 disappear into the sandcrawler.
Hang on, R2. I'm right behind you. Me too.
That was intriguing. I had a aunt. Her name was Aunt Maggie, but in their town was the main theater called Showcase Cinemas, and that pretty much any major blockbuster or big film would appear in the Quad Cities at the Showcase Cinemas. My Aunt Maggie just called my mom one day and was like, "Hey, would Robbie at the time be interested in seeing Star Wars?" And Mom's like, "You want to go see this?" And I'm kind of put two and two together with the action figures, and I'm like, "Yeah." 7 years old or so, Aunt Maggie took me. Then Mom took me a couple times when it hit the Geneseo movie theater. And then the cool thing, I remember Aunt Maggie called me then when Empire was hitting the theaters again, and Aunt Maggie called and said, "Robbie, want to go to Empire?" Darn right I do.
The Star Wars saga continues.
Although it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years, I think it'll probably be with me till I'm done.
You know, it's funny, you say bring the figures to the classroom, and I have two memories. One from kindergarten, so that was 1980, 79, 80, and somebody brought a X-Wing pilot, and show and tell, you put it in the paper bag, and everybody's got to guess. But the kid was so absent-minded. He said his name was Hush Puppy. Hush Puppy. Like, everybody's like, no, that's Luke in the X-Wing. Like, is that your imaginary, your friend? I'm like, Hush Puppy, where did you get that name? And I remember also dropping a Luke Hoth out of the window in, like, the second grade. I was playing out. That was back in the day where they would open the window as we were on the second, third story. Only in the early 80s would they do that at an elementary school, right?
Right.
I dropped him out. I never found him. I never found him.
Funny that you mentioned action figures. First memory I have there in Geneseo, my hometown, there was a Ben Franklin store.
Oh, Ben Franklin, that was by my house too.
Can lightning strike twice? It can at Ben Franklin.
After seeing the movie with Aunt Maggie, I convinced her to go to the Ben Franklin store, and they had the first wave, first 12, and I got Luke. Boy, to this day, I wish I would have kept that mint-on card, but my mom was pretty astute in that she always told me, don't get rid of your Star Wars toys. So even though we had the dark days post-83, I remember Mom would even continue to hit garage sales and find stuff, and she just kept putting it in a box. And then once I finished up college and all, she was like, here you go. And so that was pretty awesome. So I still have all my vintage collection and most of the vehicles and ships that I had from my childhood, that kind of thing. So I'm pretty happy that Mom encouraged that.
When we were shooting the real fans of the saga, we met some guy that his parents bought these things as investments, all the 12-bag figures. And his parents passed away, over the years. He lost his mom first and his dad. They were in a storage locker. And it was a friend of a good friend of mine, Patrick Jesse. And I went over to their house, and they had all these unpunched 12-bag cards. I'm like, how did you have these? He's like, my parents were collectors in the 60s and the early 70s, and they found a collecting value in these Star Wars figures, and they bought one for us to open, one to keep. He sold them all like 3 years ago on eBay. God knows what kind of fortune he's sitting on now. But he would not work out any deal with me. Now, you said that Star Wars is always going to be with you till the day you die. I know that's true for me, but I think that is the difference between the Walking Dead fan base and the Star Wars fan base. I feel like as a filmmaker, my greatest achievement is still The Walkers Among Us, but as a level of success from the fan standpoint, I thought it was a failure. Because we did not sell the kind of copies that we sold for The Force Among Us and The Force Within Us. And I never had anybody ask me to autograph a DVD for them. But I still have people bringing up The Force Among Us, which came out in 2007. People want me to sign that ancient documentary. What do you think is the difference between these two fan bases? I mean, there's really a big difference.
If you remember one of the first times you called to talk about the project of making a Walking Dead fan film and capturing kind of the essence of the fans, I think the biggest thing, and I still think it is today, The Walking Dead just hasn't had enough time to get that nostalgia factor that Star Wars has. We just celebrated Life Day.
I gotta go. Have a nice Life Day, but be careful.
42 years ago, we were watching the Star Wars Holiday Special. Now, granted, Walking Dead's now, a decade plus old. It probably has a couple more years of between Fear the Walking Dead and spin-offs and potential movies and all. So I think it has lasting power. I guess I'm not really too surprised that you didn't have maybe the same response from the fan base. I just don't think it has had enough time to kind of become a part of a cultural psyche. The fans will always be there. In the Walkers Among Us, there were folks that get tattoos of the characters, and there are folks that have maintained costumes and all that kind of stuff. And other collectibles. I think there will always be fans there, regardless what happens with The Walking Dead, whether it goes away or continues to be popular. It probably has more about just longevity. Like you said, we kind of identify as having a Star Wars lifelong love, and you kind of have to have some more time, I think, to say, well, I enjoy The Walking Dead or zombies or whatever your genre is. Has to have time to kind of stay with you. You have to kind of get that investment of time and characters and money and effort to get collectibles and that kind of stuff. So I think it could get there, and then passing it on to another generation. A lot of us, you and I, are similar. We're fathers. We've passed it on to the next generation. Whereas Walking Dead kind of hasn't. There's parents that maybe expose their family to it, but it hasn't been started to pass down yet.
Nostalgia was a big part of my Star Wars fandom, and I don't think that you really necessarily can have that with The Walking Dead because it's simply not that old. The reason why I called you years ago was because I saw your fandom in The Walking Dead and the passion that you had for it, and I'm like, God, if I'm going to make a documentary about The Walking Dead fan base, I need to bring you in. I need to have you part of the project because I wanted the authenticity. I was a fan of it, but I could see that your level of fandom was much greater than mine. And I was very, very happy with the way that you helped with the direction, steered the ship, your contribution to the project. Were you happy to be part of the project?
Very much so. As a Star Wars fan and Walking Dead fan, for me, the reason that we went to filming locations in Tunisia and Norway and why we'd make trips to Atlanta was to kind of expand that fandom and experience it from a different perspective. So you could read the comic books, you can watch the show, I could write fan mail and get responses from crew members and cast members and the folks that were walkers and that kind of stuff. But to take it to the next level was always something that I've done with both Star Wars and Walking Dead. And then for you to say, hey, let's think about this idea, can you help me? That for me was just another aspect of I can take my fandom and see where it goes someplace new. So that for me, that was really, really cool. I met folks like Anthony Ronaldo and Michael Koski, just had interacted with them, for then you to kind of run with those relationships and interview them and be interviewed or be invited into their house or their apartment. I was like, wow, this is cool that these connections have been made and that given some of those opportunities for those folks to kind of get their story told, but also to see how you were going to kind of help them tell their stories. I remember seeing the Walkers Among Us at the premiere that you and Ian pulled together, and Jay Bonusing was right behind me. And when the movie closed, Jay kind of leaned down and he said, "We're always going to be a part of it. 10 years from now, 15 years from now, my sons will be able to pop the DVD and see themselves playing at the kitchen table with the Legos when they were 11 and 13 years old, and myself to see, they're going to see what Dad liked or what he was passionate about. What you captured is going to be, it's part of time now. So that part was very, very cool.
I take that as a compliment. I've said this before, but I think that's the benefit of making very, very high profile independent films, is that at the end of the day, no, we're not making millions of dollars. We're not even making thousands of dollars at this point. But what it is it's about capturing the moment. And like you said, it's about having your sons watch this and just being in this time capsule. I remember one of the biggest compliments that I received on The Walkers Among Us was David McGee, who you're friends with. He was at my house for the premiere. He was at my house, stayed the night at my house, and he kind of broke down in tears. And I'm like, my friend, what's wrong? And he goes, I just feel so honored to be part of this film project because my grandchildren are going to get to see my story on film. And I was like, man, if everybody that I filmed cried to me, that would be, that's the payoff, right? But I thought that was really, really cool that he understood that, especially getting up there at an older age, everybody's time is limited, but like Jay Bonasinya said, he's always going to be a part of it. And I think that's the beauty of film. If 100 people are watching it, or 1 million people are watching it. It's funny, we actually met on the trip to Norway. That was such a moving trip, and I always thank Mark for that. What would you say was better for you, the trip to Tunisia or the trip to Norway? Do you have a favorite of those two?
Wow, that's a really hard one. That's maybe I'll say Tunisia. Mark and I had become friends many, many years before the trip to Tunisia. He actually came to the U.S. and stayed with us for the premiere of Attack of the Clones. We were having dinner at our house, and he was talking about, I'm going back to Tunisia. I'm going to do a Star Wars trip. You should go. And although I've traveled both for pleasure and with work all throughout the United States and a little bit into Mexico and all, never really thought about North Africa. I mean, as a fan, it was always intriguing, but like, what are we going to see in the Sahara? Surprisingly, Lisa, my wife, was like, you should do that. Like, how many opportunities are you going to have that somebody's going to organize a trip like that and you be able to participate in it? So for me, there was an element of like getting out of my comfort zone, and it wasn't all that long after 9/11. And so then there was this all kind of, is it safe to travel outside the United States? I remember being in the Land Rover, and Andrew Thomas from Australia was on behind me, and a couple of us Americans were just talking about, do we feel like we were safe, and getting the travel itinerary to the State Department and all that kind of stuff. And Andrew just kind of leaned over the bench seat and was like, you guys are so American because tourism is so heavy part of their economy. He's like, all these Land Rovers, do you think anybody is trying to find Americans that are like going out to marketplaces, in small villages around? He's like, just relax, enjoy yourself. So I probably think that, and then just the friendship, being a part of an international group of fellow Star Wars fans and kind of taking all of that for the first time was probably a little bit more memorable. But boy, Norway was amazing as well. I'd like to go back there a second time before I'd go back to Tunisia a second time.
We were not on the Tunisian trip together. I went in 2005. What year did you go?
I was in 2003. I think you went on the trip after ours.
When Mark was on the show, I didn't share this with him because he was very, very passionate about that Tunisia is completely safe. And I'm sure it is. But I had a very strange experience there. We were partying very, very late. I think until like 4 a.m. And this was at the Lars homestead. We all had dinner earlier, and it was me, this girl from the States, and a friend of mine from Belgium. If you speak French over there, you get around very, very well. It's like 4 a.m, right? I was playing music with these guys. I was playing the hand drum, and these guys were clapping along and singing. And my friend is like, you know what? He wants to take you in his car and go for a ride. And my friend told me, he's like, I would not recommend leaving this place. So maybe he was more afraid for me because he misread it. But that was the only experience that I had. And of course, alcohol was involved. But anyway, I would love to go back to Tunisia, but like you, I would love to go back to Norway. But man, was it so expensive. Because I love Empire Strikes Back so much. The trip is priceless. It really is.
I agree 100%.
Since it's getting close to Thanksgiving, what is the one thing that you're thankful for?
I've come to learn, being fortunate to be retrospective, and the thing that I've enjoyed is both the journey with Lisa, my wife, then just being a father. Until both of them are kind of out of the house, I didn't realize how important being a dad was to me, whether it was, just trying to be active in their lives or being a good influence or trying to be a consultant here later in life on helping them make some good life choices. So the fact that I have a healthy relationship with both boys and Lisa's here with me, joining me on the life journey, those are probably the things. None of us are getting any younger, so those things, whether, there's always a love for Star Wars or Walking Dead, but Star Wars could go away, but family will be there. Also this year I turned 50 years old. I've been examining my health and some of my life choices and in terms of diet and all that kind of stuff.
Congratulations on turning the big 5-0. When I was 40, I got very emotional because I was like, oh my God, I'm 40 years old. And my aunt said it best, and I'll never forget this. She goes, just wait till you turn 50. So I think that's kind of one of those, turning 50 during the pandemic, I don't know if I'd be able to handle that, man.
You recall, we've been talking about trying to do this interview going back to like June. And at one point I'm like, I have back pain right now. So I'm just grouchy. This is not a joke. That came from sitting down on a bed to put on a pair of socks. It was probably about 8 weeks before that finally took care of itself. But I was like, how, I'm just putting on socks. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my goodness.
We know we're not going to last forever, and when you hit those milestones like 50, 60, 70, it's like, okay, how am I going to make it another 10 years to the next milestone?
Right. That actually kind of takes me into like the next chapter, both as a fan, but also as just a human being, because now, granted, I don't know when I'm going to retire from work, but the house that we have was pretty much, we purchased to raise the family. Both boys are more or less going to be out of the house now. How big of a house do I need? Now that I try not to buy as many collectibles because it's like, what am I going to do with them? And if we're going to downsize at some point in the future, at 50 years old and being a collector and still being a fan, I'm finding like I have to be much more intentional about what I acquire and what am I going to do with this stuff.
I think that's a great point that you bring up because I have so much stuff. I'm waiting for my wife in the other room to say, yes, you do. And I always tell my wife, I said, when I die, do not have a fire sale. And some of it I look at as, I've been on eBay for 21 years, 99, 98 even. So I know that there's always somebody else out there looking for the stuff that I have. But again, that makes a lot of work for the people that are left with it after we pass away. Yeah, it's an investment, but never buy anything for that reason. Buy it because, as you know, to enjoy it.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, man, what do we do with all the stuff we have? I mean, I have so many Christmas ornaments. I didn't even count, but I have like 12 full-size trees in my house. So I can definitely relate to that comment that you made. That's a very, very strong point. Would you say that during 2020, what have you used more to get by? The Walking Dead or Star Wars? Like the philosophy of those two stories.
Oh, good question. Probably Star Wars. Star Wars ultimately is the story of good overcoming evil. This has a bit of a more optimistic message. I think Walking Dead, although has moments of good versus evil, I mean, sometimes I think the characters blend or blur the lines between good and evil depending on the situation and how we as viewers relate to each. I would say Star Wars, and kind of holding out the belief that good will overcome evil, whether it's coronavirus or talking politics with our neighbors or sheltering at home. I think for me, it's a more comforting message of good versus evil versus how do I survive during the times of an apocalypse.
Yeah, amen to that. All right, man, I'm going to wrap up your time on the show, and thank you again for joining me on Machtails from the Cantina. We're going to play a little game called Either Or. This is just a kind of a lightning way to get to know you more. Daryl or Han Solo?
Han Solo. Daryl's a badass. Always will be, but Han's been there. Han shot first. Han Solo.
Christmas or Halloween?
Oh, Halloween. My birthday is a week before Halloween, and it's almost become a bit of a tradition that we start celebrating Halloween in earnest around my birthday, and we just enjoy it all week long. So,
Michonne or Ahsoka?
That's a good one. Both of my boys were fans of Clone Wars and Rebels. I didn't quite get into those animated series as much as the feature films. So when Ahsoka came along, originally I remember feeling like she was more of a sidekick to Anakin. Yeah. Michonne as a character in the comic books came into this Walking Dead storyline as a very cool, interesting character. And when the TV show introduced her, kind of with the silhouette and walking with the two walkers, and that was kind of the first time we'd seen somebody had control over walkers. That left a huge impression, both from the comic book and TV shows. So between Ahsoka and Michonne, I'd go Michonne.
Yeah, I gotta go Michonne as well. You know, I know this is blasphemy to say, you know, I like Ahsoka, but she is a big fan favorite, and a lot of people are excited about her coming out of The Mandalorian. And I love Ashley Eckstein, and I love what she did with the character, but I don't have that connection. Maybe when my daughter sits down and watches the Clone Wars and falls in love with Ahsoka, then I can be on that same page. Do you have any complaints about The Mandalorian?
No complaints. I have a concern. So far, I think Favreau and Filoni are doing a great job bringing back some of the tells of the original movies and projects. Yeah. I don't want them, though, to take it too far. Let's keep it where it's going right now, which I like.
Luke Skywalker or Rick Grimes?
Luke. I identify each character at different points in my life. So when you're 7, 8 years old and Luke's got Princess Leia swinging across the Death Star chasm and blowing up the Death Star, that leaves a huge impression. Rick came along as at the time I was a father and just wanting to be a productive member of society and have healthy relationships in difficult times, that kind of stuff. So love them both, but I'd have to give Luke the edge for the childhood factor.
And then my last question is,
when's the Toys R Us documentary going to get done? I've been waiting.
The thing about the Toys R Us documentary is it is more of a news station narrative style. It's funny because I did Force Among Us, Force Within Us, which was easy, The Walkers Among Us, which was almost as easy. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a reality show. I've done 3 documentaries. Reality show kicked my ass. It's not a documentary. It's such a different world. And then when I started editing the Saying Goodbye to Jeffrey, I'm like, oh my God, this is not easy to do. The good thing about it is I will finish it. I do not see myself, unfortunately, working next year. I'm going to have all of next year off unless the pandemic really gets the entertainment business back to normal, which, you know, I don't really see that happening. So I'd like to say Toys R Us documentary, let's say early spring. Now, a lot of people are asking, when is the real Fans of the Saga going to be finished? Well, you know, 9 episodes are finished. 6 are on Amazon. 3 are on the Real Fans of the Saga Facebook page. So that leaves me with just a couple more to do. You know what? Can we say, and you guys can hold me to this, by the end of next year, you will see the Toys R Us, you'll see the Toys R Us documentary, you will see the completed 12 episodes of the real fans of the saga. And hopefully we'll see a season 2 of Machtails from the Cantina. Now that sounds like a lot, but if I'm unemployed for all of next year, it's something that's very, very capable, that I can do. So, that is probably the long answer to your question, but that is a little bit of details for you.
Yeah. No, that one's just been hanging out there, and I remember you shot a lot of footage with the stores closing and that kind of stuff. Back when we were traveling, even just into town, and that used to be like, well, what do you want to do tonight? I'm like, let's swing by Borders and Toys R Us, which of course neither exists anymore. But there's a part of me that's like, oh, I wouldn't mind just walking around to Toys R Us tonight. I miss that. And so, yeah.
At the end, when I did that, when I walked around the store, I felt like I was trying to make up for lost time. My mom was like, no, I'm not taking you to Toys R Us. That's a bad idea, because she'd rather take me to the Ben Franklin or the Jewel Osco. Because it wasn't this giant toy store that I would keep her in for 3 hours and make her spend a bunch of money,
Right.
So it was like Little Bucky.
What's good for one can be good for two, and little Bucky has what's good for you.
Ben Franklin, Jewel Osco, which is funny because the toys are so overly priced there. But when I was going through these Toys R Us's at the end, when I was walking through, I would always walk out of there with a little dust in my eye. The Toys R Us documentary is something that I am very, very passionate about. It's the story of me and my daughter and my lost time is a big part of that project. So I have to finish it,
Yeah.
And again, like you said, the nice thing about these projects is that they're time capsules, and your kids, my daughter, their kids, their grandkids will be able to look back on these and say, hey, that's my grandpa Rob in The Walkers Among Us. Hey, this is me with my dad in the Toys R Us documentary, and so on and so forth. We got a lot with that. I don't know, Bo Glazer, that was in he passed away, and his daughter watches the real fans of the saga like on a weekly basis.
Oh, wow.
That's how she connects with her dad. And to me, that's priceless,
Yeah.
Making him live on through that, which is weird because your cameo, I call it a cameo, but your appearance in the real fans of the saga was with Bo. It was all with Bo.
Yeah.
Which is cool. Because that was the first time you met him.
Yes.
Morning.
It's Rob.
I don't know you.
Hey,
Hey, what's up, man?
not much.
How
Rob
you doing
Schneider.
on Bo?
Nice to meet you, Bo.
Hey, life is short, man. Rob, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Happy holidays to you. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas. And we will see you guys next time on Mocktails from the Cantina.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
You can take Star Wars with you. It goes wherever you go.